Right, so here we are, and we're gonna discuss Theresa May's speech. Not all 22 pages of it, but we're just going to get an overview here from Femi and Will here. Despite the T-shirt, this is not Femi. This is Will.
Back to front.
Oh man, you can't help some people. You can't. But anyway, we have limited time for jovialities.
Sorry.
So we've all just watched it now. What's your overview thinking, Femi?
She was actually honest for once in that she hasn't pretended that Brexit is going to be fine, that there are no obstacles in the way, that we'll get whatever we want. Yeah. She's admitted that, that point blank, that we're likely to just continue to parrot and copy EU law, and that if we choose not to do that in future, it will be at the expense of our ability to compete in Europe. So most parliaments will think, actually, let's protect jobs, let's protect job security, and they will just copy EU law. Which brings up the question, why are we leaving the European Union if we plan to continue copying their laws? Because in practice, that makes us less sovereign because we now won't have a say in those laws.
Yeah, and also on top of that, if everyone's going to be keeping the same regulation, what happened to this bonfire of regulations? Exactly. So that economic opportunity isn't there. Well, it never was there, but it's an admission that it's not there. Finally. So the only reason is the trade deals, which our own Treasury have already told us a promise of a packet of crisps in exchange for a full course meal. So there is no economic argument here anyway. So Will, what were you thinking as you watched?
I think that I agree with Femi. Every speech the government seems to do on Brexit, you just sit there watching thinking this is a perfect justification of why we need to stay in the European Union. Yeah. But then they have this conclusion that but blah blah blah, we have to leave. It's because they're clearly only doing this because they cannot face up to the British people and be honest with them and simply say that what you were told 2 years ago, or 1.5 years ago, is not possible, and that what's best for the country is to stay in. And also, today in particular was a really depressing mixture of reality, because there was some honesty about the fact that we're going to lose access to the single market and lose... we're not going to have as much access to the European markets, but there was also so much delusion still. And next year is just going to be dismantling this delusion at a very painful cost to our economy and our people.
Yeah, but we're getting a hell of an education though, are we?
And we are, it's a fantastic education.
And this at last, wasn't so much sound bites anymore. I mean, I noticed that as well. We kind of moved from May sound bites to May actually talking about reality, breaking down all the different sectors and the advantages that we're getting at the moment. And also, like you just pointed out, that big confessional statement also that we're not going to get the same access as before. Yeah. Which I think is key when you bear in mind Corbyn's speech and his red line there about, we're going to hold the government to David Davis's promises of no less access than we have now, and we reserve the right to reject a deal that is actually damaging to us. So you can see some shifting chess pieces here, which is kind of fun. So what I want to do is kind of like go through some of the sections of the speech. So there was the first part, talking about, her raison d'etre, and I guess it was a pushback against Corbyn's vision. But then she said, this is all about 5 tests, and I know you want to chat about this one. So the 5 tests, well, firstly, it has to respect the result of the referendum. Secondly, we have to have a stable solution with the EU, not something that bumbles along and ever-changing. Thirdly, it has to protect jobs and work. And security. Fourthly, the tone has to be right. It has to feel like what British people, our identity. It's got to
be outward-looking and
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that outward-looking thing. So the referendum wasn't about being inward-looking. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows about outward-looking.
So being completely open to the rest of the world.
Yeah. So a redefinition there of what it was about, and then finally we have to keep our union together, our 4 nations together. So those are the 5 tests.
Well, I think that was the best part of the speech for me, because she has now set out on her terms, on the Conservative Party leader, the Prime Minister's terms, how she thinks that we, the people in Parliament, should judge her deal. Yeah. Now, if you look at, sorry if I may, for the last 4, will it be stable, will it endure? No, because people like me and Femi, if we lose now, will spend the next 20 years absolutely ensuring that we will make sure that we put Britain back in the European Union.
The under 55 population of the UK, we voted to remain, so it won't be enduring by definition.
Absolutely. If you look at jobs, everybody knows that it's going to cost jobs, not protect jobs. If you look at tone, the words were that it has to ensure that we're an outward-looking European democracy. The only thing threatening our status as an outward-looking European democracy is her deal and is Brexit. And then if you look at the Union, well, again, the only thing threatening the ties within the United Kingdom and the peace process and stability in Northern Ireland is
as well
Brexit.
as the Scottish dynamic.
Also it's going to really piss the hell out of the Scots. So what is threatening the status and the integrity of the United Union, again, is Brexit. So then you look at the big one, which is number one. Should we respect the referendum result? Well, if on her own terms the 4 other tests fail, then there is no reason to respect her deal. If 4 of her tests fail, then we have absolutely everybody in the country, every leaver, and I was once a leaver, has the right to say, no, I reject what you've come back with, it's not what I voted for, it's not good enough for my future, let's reject it.
That's really interesting, because that was exactly my line of thinking. When I wrote those down, I thought, what if you can't have all of them? Which one would you drop? Because if you drop the first one, you can get the rest. If you drop, for example, jobs, it's like, ooh, but that knocks onto the others. You can't drop the union. The only droppable one in this unworkable set is the first one.
Absolutely.
Femi?
And the first one doesn't even work, because we're talking about respecting the will of the people from 2016. What did they want? They wanted to be better off. No, that every analysis has said that we won't be better off. Even Theresa May today has said that we'll be damaging our access to the European market. They wanted to protect the NHS. Well, no, if you damage our economy, you damage funding to the NHS. If you also discourage EU migrants coming here, you discourage the very people who are keeping our NHS afloat, because they currently, relative to population size, make up more doctors than we do.
Yes.
They wanted to rebalance the country to make sure that places like the North-East are better off and that they aren't left behind. Well, guess who's the worst hit by Brexit? The North-East, the areas that voted for Brexit. So that if we're talking about respecting the wishes and the deep felt needs of people who voted for Brexit, Brexit should be stopped.
Yeah. I mean, this is a real irony that people were saying, you know, immigrants strain our NHS. No, there's a word missing there. Immigrants leaving strain our NHS. Because when you get those young people coming in that are paying in taxes for our NHS and they're not using it because they're young and healthy, or if they need to use it because they're European citizens and go back home and they use it for a few years and move on, they're just paying in money for it. And then, like Femi was saying, there's the doctors and the nurses. EU citizens, 5% of our population, nurses 7%, doctors 10%. So, you know, and they are leaving now, and it's not because of the English language test, because those already here don't have to do it. Anyway, we can go down that rabbit warren, but let's move forward, because then the next point was she was telling everyone, okay, this is going to be complex, like really complex, but look, we're making progress. Look at the December deal. What do you reckon about that bit?
Well, I mean, she was saying that in order to keep it afloat, we're going to have a dispute resolution mechanism, an arbitration system, which is going to be, quote, entirely independent. That means a foreign court that isn't linked to the EU democracy or the UK democracy, i.e. a less legitimate foreign court deciding with jurisdiction in the UK. That is not what Brexiters voted for at all.
That's if we borrow the EFTA one, right? Which is the most likely one, at least in the short term.
Well, she says it'd be completely independent, so I'm not sure if EFTA would even meet that particular requirement.
Everywhere you look, you see absolutely needless attempts to replicate things which are perfectly functioning. And any attempt to deviate from that replication leads to a massive cost of what British people are going to get.
I mean, it's the Euratom joke, isn't it? You know, we're leaving Euratom. Why are we leaving Euratom? Because of the ECJ. Okay, well, what ruling has the ECJ ever made on Euratom that you can cite, let alone one that the British people disagree with? So it's these needless red lines that, as Gina Miller in one of her tweets pointed out, lots of red lines are starting to go pink, because out of practicality, you need to start moving them, because if you want to be in all these productive EU agencies, then you just need to say, well, there needs to be an arbitrator, and everyone else has agreed one, so just sign up to it. And so that's beginning to shift. Interesting next section was it looks like the EU is obviously going to say, right, pick Norway or pick Canada as your basis to work from. So then Theresa May was trying to say, Norway doesn't work and Canada doesn't work.
WTO doesn't work.
Yeah, so we need something bespoke, and then goes into the whole description of bespoke, which is cherry picking. And for me, and I'd like your commentary on this, to me this is starting to look a lot like Switzerland, where they have lots of bilaterals with the single market, but it's got to be such a mess that it's a headache for Switzerland and the EU to keep it up. And basically the EU is thinking, we don't want to go there again, and especially not with the Brits, who are going to be constantly complex and messy. That's why they want to give us, pick that one or pick that one, so we can all get on with business.
Yeah, so the Norway model is basically staying in the single market. You get all the benefits of being able to make one single version of your product and have it be legal everywhere, and have mutual recognition, so that you just need to make it according to UK standards, and it will again be legal everywhere. But the rules, the laws about products, those will still be set by the EU, and we won't have an actual say in them. So that means a significant loss of sovereignty. The other option is the Canada model, which is basically just a free trade deal with occasional bits of mutual recognition sprinkled in here and there. And then there's WTO rules, again, which is ruled out, which is basically crashing out without a deal. And she has said explicitly that all those are completely unacceptable because they would leave us with significantly reduced access to the European market, our closest geographic neighbour. And she mentioned about how we'd go into detail about having mutual recognition agreements. And yes, countries like Switzerland, they have a set of mutual recognition agreements. But the thing is, Switzerland is in Schengen. That's not a model that I think most Brexiters would be okay copying. That means that you can enter Switzerland without even using a passport. It's completely open borders. And that's one of the reasons why the EU is so willing to have that many agreements with Switzerland, because it makes sense. Switzerland is right at the heart of their entire continent.
Yeah, with goods just flowing through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
And so
the average number of mutual recognition agreements that the EU has is about 7, and that does not cover all the parts of the industry that need to be covered. So we will still be at a significant competitive disadvantage compared to EU countries.
Yeah.
It's just not workable.
Because even with Switzerland, there's lots of customs formalities with forms if you're trying to actually get supplies from there or ship supplies to it, and so it's going to immediately put up all those burdens for our small businesses that aren't used to doing that at the moment.
I mean, so the speech confirmed today that we have a Prime Minister who's leading a government who are constantly feasting in the orchard on cherries, or the alternative, that they're constantly in the bakery demanding more cake. Now, those are the two positions that they fluctuate between.
Yeah.
And essentially, what she needs to do is say, I don't want, she's entitled to say, I want a bespoke deal. I think actually, to be honest, we probably could get a bespoke deal, but what she needs to recognise is that bespoke essentially means slightly different from Canada or slightly different from Norway, and it's evidently going to be Canada, and it's going to be slightly better than Canada. She needs to be very honest that that's what they're going for, and it's just not good enough for our country.
Yeah, I think that's a really good summary. You got to start with something that you know, and sort of bespoke isn't going to be the perfect mishmash in the middle. It's going to be based on Canada. That's clearly where it's going with the red lines, and slightly improved. But that's going to be about it. And there's a reason beyond, all the headache that the EU have with Switzerland why they don't want to do that model. And that is also because they keep saying they want a level playing field. And if you've got the UK outside the EU saying, we want to come in and copy you on this part, but also have a policy say, but not paying into that part, then basically that's not a level playing field. That is a big country just on your border trying to tilt all of the playing field constantly to their favour, and then that starts pissing off others. So you're either playing football and everyone's going by the offside rule, or you're out and you can do keep yuppies by yourself. but you can't be playing the football game with the referee not allowed to blow the whistle as you do dangerous tackles and goal hang.
And let's not forget that this isn't about the EU punishing us. This is about the EU maintaining the benefits that it has. I mean, okay, we're going to be copying EU law so that we can maintain those benefits. But that means that we just have to make one version. That means we can just make a version that will be valid for all of the EU. Now imagine if other people left. That means that whole common system of having common rules gets less and less, and the benefit of having those common rules gets less and less. The whole point of the EU is to provide economic benefits to its companies, And the more people that leave, the less that benefit has, because it means that there are less harmonised countries where you can make one single version and have it be legal everywhere. This isn't about punishing the UK, this is about maintaining the benefits of being in the EU.
Which, if I can just briefly point out, is exactly what Thatcher sent Lord Cockfield to do in 1980s, to make sure that we had a single set of rules in the single market. And
that's how the single market was built, complete with structural funds to struggling regions, so that you have a redistribution of money, so that everyone keeps up and keeps a healthy ecosystem geographically. All the things that, you know, some of them are objecting to at the moment. Well, I want to comment on one thing about the digital single market before asking you guys predominantly about the youth angle that you tried to slip in at the end. One thing that really surprised me, and I was like, you what? Is she said, we want to stay in all these frameworks, but we're not going to stay in the digital single market as it evolves. And I thought, my God, tech, and the reason why she gave is kind of like, you know, there's going to be new regulations there and we want to be light and nimble and all the rest. But I am sure the tech community are going to go mad about this, because the tech community was 80 to 90% pro-EU for the reasons of freedom of movement, so access to talent there, but also the digital single market. So a big single market for data usage and data acceptance across the continent. So if you start up a small business in London, then basically you can be transferring data and hosting data and doing all of your services right across the continent. And she's saying, throw that out, we're going to do our own thing. And so I'm waiting to see what the tech community say about that. I think they're going to be quite unhappy that they'll have two sets of data regulations rapidly adapting to navigate. Right. Do you have comments on that, or
just that it doesn't make sense to essentially hold ourselves back on the area that's the most innovative of our generation?
Yeah. And they think they can be innovative on regulations and outcompete the EU on that. But for the most part, it's like in science and some of the life sciences, you gain the advantage by being the most innovative player in a large market. That's how you get the innovative edge, and that's how we've been benefiting so far. Right. Towards the end, she was like she was praising the genius of British people, and particularly the genius of our future youth.
She's been watching Femi's interviews, that's why.
Yeah, she's like, damn, he's hot, you know. He's gonna come round and champion exactly what I'm saying. No way. So she said, and continuity of centuries of self-government, exactly, because that's what we've been doing outside the EU and inside the EU, self-government. We've had a hand in all of our laws. Our commitment to freedom under the rule of law, our belief in enterprise and innovation, but above all, the talent and genius of our people, and especially our young people, like these two lads here, right, are the seeds of our success in the future, as they have been the guarantors of our success in the past. So, I think there's a big recognition there in Brexiteers that, oh my God, we forgot about the kids.
I think Theresa May is absolutely right to say that young people have been, in many instances, the seeds of our success in the past, and they will be in the future, because I think that if Brexit is going to be stopped, and I definitely do think that Brexit will be stopped, it will come from young people, you know, which basically in this debate is anyone under 50, just rising up and saying, maybe I could have said 30, I don't know how old you are. Sorry, anyone just rising up and saying, look, this is not the future we want, it's not even the future people voted for, let's come to our senses and just stop it.
Yeah. Does anything that Theresa May said today sound like it's simple, that it can be completed in a couple of years? No. Brexit is going to take decades. It's a decades-long project. Yeah. And the people who will be living with that is a generation that voted strongly against it. This is our future we're talking about. It's our next steps. It's our ability to find uni places that are well funded. It's our ability to find jobs in a thriving economy. This is our future. She says that the generation is going to be looking back and they're not going to be caring about how the negotiations went. Yes, we're going to be looking back and we're going to be really angry if you didn't give us the chance to turn this around, because it's our future that's getting screwed up.
Yeah. And so this speech is called Road to Brexit, but I would prefer to give it the name of A Peek Inside Pandora's Box, because that's what's coming up, that's what's being shown. And there were some interesting questions from the audience, because it was a media audience, and of course BBC gets to go first, you know, all of our chums. But then there were two questions from a German journalist and a French journalist, and the German journalist said, well, seeing as you've just highlighted how messy it's going to be over all these years, is Brexit worth it? And I thought that was brilliant. And of course she was like, oh yes, well of course we have to go through with it. You know, the people have spoken. Yeah, the people are still here. You know, they're still speaking. Ask them again, you know, are we on a sensible path? That's what you do in any business and project management, right? And so then the other question was from a French journalist, which was like, Theresa May, you're going to be honest with your people that if you're going to have a hard border in Ireland, and you may not want to call it a hard border, but you're going to have tech set up there to monitor it. Might be lightweight, but you're going to have some infrastructure. Are you at least going to admit that? And she was like, no hard border. Well then, how are you going to do tech solutions? You know, in invisible camera posts?
It's just highly reckless. I mean, anything that doesn't address all issues on both sides, the need to have border controls, the need to have borders completely open in order to maintain the Good Friday Agreement. Anything that doesn't address that will have to be addressed later in one way, in one direction or the other. And if it goes in the direction that messes with the Good Friday Agreement, but they just say, it's okay now, we'll sort it out later, after we've already left, and then we realise there is no solution to the Irish border problem, that is just the Tories kicking the can down the road and expecting future generations to clean up the mess. Well, the future generations voted against this.
Yeah, I mean, like, young people are constantly told that the attacks on Corbyn and the IRA don't work because we don't remember the troubles which have happened between the 1960s. Yeah. Well, I know for a fact that between 1960 and 2010, 3,568 people died in Ireland because of the troubles. Yeah. Okay. I'm the person, Femi is the person, you're the person, who are entirely aware that you cannot incinerate the Good Friday Agreement. Yep. The people who should remember are the people telling us that we don't remember. Yeah. They should be acutely aware. Yep. You know, the Tory party conference bombing in Brighton, they should be so aware of what they're playing with. They're playing with fire, they don't recognise it. We all know what terrorism on our streets looks like, you know, because it's an ongoing thing now. I mean, we can all see the flare-ups that there have been between the Palestinians and Israelis. I mean, everyone knows the sense that when you get into really nasty political territory, especially when you're reawakening something, it is dangerous stuff. Now, I mean, Brexit could have been done sensibly if you were to say, right, we're worried about the Northern Ireland border. We realise that for every 17 people that voted leave, it was 16 that voted remain, as John Major said. Therefore, we're going to honour the thing by coming out of the EU into the single market and customs union, EFTA-style kind of deal, see if we can get a political voice there, then see what our people think, because we could either go back in from there or shape up our policy voice from there, or if we wanted to leave further, then basically just put a plan before the people about how you'd leave the shebang, you know, something that's a more well-thought-through project. But they haven't done that. The hard Brexiteers have gone the full reckless, and it's a gamble, because I think more and more people are going to say, you know what, we should just drop the lot. We can drop the lot and focus on things that are more worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
Cool. Let's wrap it up there then. Right, so thanks, Will. Thanks, Femi.
Absolute pleasure.
And thanks for your applause over there, Callum, who's busy sitting over there on his laptop doing his own thing. And catch you all soon.
Thank you very much.
Oh, there.